Hi everyone, I hope you've had a wonderful Christmas and New Year. Just to let you know that I have put some new values-led narrative stories in the values pack. I'm going to attach them as a shared drive to this email. This is just a video really just explaining how they work. There are 4 sets of stories based on growth, connection, authenticity, and I'm trying to remember what the first one is. It's gone, but there's 4 different stories in there. You can use them with your students, and then you'll see when you get to the end that there's then a worksheet for them to do. The idea is that you probably pick a values-led story based on where your student needs it rather than doing all 4, but there's no problem with doing all 4 if you wanted to. Theo had been standing at the start of the path for longer than he'd realised. The mountain rose ahead of him, its slope gentle at first, then winding upwards until it disappeared into the cloud. Set into the cloud were stepping stones, uneven, spaced, just far enough apart to demand attention. Not impossible, just uncomfortable. Theo shifted his weight, feeling the familiar pull to stay where he was. This place wasn't exciting, but it was predictable. He knew how to stand there. He knew what was expected. Up there, he didn't. The stones seemed to whisper their own questions. What if you slip? What if you don't get it right first time? What if you try and it shows? Theo hadn't come to the mountain to fail. He'd come because staying still has started to feel heavier than moving. And when growth stirs, the arena opens. You don't have to reach the top today. The voice came from a little way up the path. Mara sat on one of the stones, boots dusty, jacket unzipped, as if she'd pause mid-climb without thinking twice about it. She wasn't watching Theo closely. She wasn't measuring his progress. She simply made space. Most people think this place is about getting higher, Mara said, tapping the stone beside her. It's not. Theo frowned. Then what's the point? Mara smiled. She was not encouraging, but she was not also disappointed. The point is learning how to step. She stood and moved aside, revealing the next stone clearly. Growth doesn't ask for confidence, she added. It asks for effort. Theo looked at the stones again. They hadn't changed, but the path felt different now. Theo took a breath and stepped. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but deliberately. The stone held. He didn't rush the next step. He noticed the stretch in his legs, the balance it took to stay upright. And he noticed something else too. The fear had not gone. It had just stopped being in charge. Mara nodded once, as if she'd expected exactly this. That's growth, she said. Not getting it right, but staying with it. Theo looked back down the path. The place where he had been standing felt further away now, not because he had climbed far, but because he'd chosen to move. As the path continued upwards, the stones remained uneven. The clouds didn't clear. The mountain didn't promise success, but Theo knew something new. Growth wasn't about reaching the top. It was about practicing the next step. And when he paused again, as he knew he would, the arena would still be there, waiting. Mara didn't speak straight away. She waited until Theo had steadied himself on the stone, not just physically, but in the way his shoulders settled once the step was behind him. Then she reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out something small. It wasn't sharp or polished. It wasn't a trophy. Just a flat, worn piece of stone, smooth on one side, rough on the other, as if it had been carried for a long time. She placed it into Theo's hand. This isn't for climbing higher, Mara said. and it's not for getting it right. Theo turned the stone over between his fingers. One edge was uneven, chipped slightly, as though it had been shaped by use rather than design. "What is it for then?" he asked. Mara crouched slightly so they were level. "It's for remembering that effort counts," she said, "even when the outcome isn't clear, especially when it isn't." Theo looked back up the path. The stones were still there, the climb still unfinished. "So I only get it if I keep going?" he asked. Mara shook her head. "You get it because you stepped," she said. "Growth isn't about how far you go. It's about choosing to engage when it would be easier not to." Theo closed his fingers around the stone. It felt solid, grounded, real. "This mark doesn't mean you're finished," Mara continued, "and it doesn't mean you won't pause again." A small pause of her own. "It means you're practicing." Theo slipped the stone into his pocket, noticing its weight, not heavy, but reassuring. As he stood there, the mountain didn't seem smaller, but he did. Not insignificant, just less stuck. When he took his next step, it wasn't because the fear had gone or the path had changed. It was because he understood something now. Growth doesn't arrive all at once. It builds step by deliberate step. And the arena of growth didn't disappear behind him. It never did. It stayed, ready for every moment he chose effort over comfort again. Growth isn't measured by height climbed, but by the willingness to keep stepping. So you can see then that once you've gone through the narrative, there is a student quest log at the end of each story. This is really to get them to focus on the values, how they can take steps, almost sort of actions towards those values, what they notice when they're taking those actions, and then to get them to think about what strengths it's revealed. And then obviously we want them to be able to take forward what they've learned from that situation into other situations. So we've got the carrying it forward, and then key to Resta, the reflective activity at the end. I hope you all find these beneficial tools. Some feedback would be absolutely fantastic. And if you think it's worth me creating any more values-led stories, please do let me know. Thanks again, everyone.